Chapter 613 Flesh Mound in the Way. Bow City Street was mainly filled with three-story buildings. The first floors were shops facing the street, the second floors were for storage, and the third floors were for residential purposes. The street was a complete mess. Many buildings were run down, while toward the end of the street stood a fortified building with a sturdy cage inside, used to hold captured demon creatures. The cage was spacious, close to the size of a room. Inside it stood half a dozen people, including Wang Sanpang and Zhao Kunsen. "Please stop crying. I'm begging you. If your noise attracts the undead, we are all going to die," said Wang Sanpang to the teenage girl beside him. The girl was sobbing, trying her best not to make any sound, yet her large eyes were filled with tears and terror. "We can't just stay here, either. Should we try and run away?" said a young man in a black rider jacket. "Holy crap! Didn't I tell you already? The whole place out there is overrun with zombies. We can't go there. Everyone that went is dead," blurted out Zhao Kunsen. Last night at the walls, when Mo Fan and the others went to the tower for the gathering signal, Zhao Kunsen and Wang Sanpang had come home. Who could have thought something so bizarre would happen the next morning? They were just about to retreat when a giant lump of flesh swept across the sky and landed right on the main street. The street was rather large, but had only a small number of alleyways. The place was already crawling with black zombies and white skeletons. The people who had left in that direction were all dead. Therefore, Zhao Kunsen and Wang Sanpang tried to gather the people of Bow City here to hide in the cage. However, they only managed to find a few people. The others had already gone missing. Suddenly, the cry of a zombie came from outside the building. The faces of the people in the cage fell. Even their breathing halted. "Don't come here, don't come here. Go somewhere else, please." Zhao Kunsen started praying to his god. However, whatever he prayed for didn't happen. The zombie smelled fresh living meat and rammed the door open. It ran straight at the cage even though the iron sheet was piercing into its body. "Damn it, kill it," cursed Wang Sanpang. "It's only one of them. We can kill it together." Zhao Kunsen let out a relieved sigh. The two immediately stepped out from the cage. Zhao Kunsen glanced at Wang Sanpang and said, "I'll keep it busy. You will look for a chance to kill it." Wang Sanpang glanced at Zhao Kunsen and responded, "That's what I wanted to say." A chill ran down their spines simultaneously. "Fuck, one of us has the wind element, and the other has the earth element. Both our spells are movement spells. How the heck are we going to kill it?" screamed Zhao Kunsen. The zombie was already rushing at them. The creature's speed was 2 or 3 times faster than a human's, which was why commoners were basically dead when they were targeted by the zombies. The two reacted quickly, immediately casting a third-tier earth wave and wind track respectively. Zhao Kunsen ran around the room wildly, and the zombie chased after him. "Eat this!" As soon as Wang Sanpang cast his earth wave, his figure shifted eerily behind the undead. A golden light suddenly blossomed on his palm, swiftly turning into a sharp spike. He stabbed the spike right into the back of the zombie's head when it was not paying attention. The glowing spike was deadly against the undead. Even though he did not stab where its undead crystal was, he still managed to kill the zombie with the attack. As the zombie slowly fell to the ground, Zhao Kunsen uttered a relieved sigh and raised his thumb at Wang Sanpang. "I didn't know you had a weapon to defend yourself." The 5 people hiding in the cage were relieved too. It turned out that magicians were still the most reliable at crucial times. Wang Sanpang retrieved his light spike and glanced outside of the door that had been slammed open. His face turned pale white in the next second. "Holy crap! Quick, into the cage!" he screamed. As soon as he uttered the words, the damaged door was suddenly knocked down by a huge impact, followed by several zombies surging into the building. They almost filled up the room, each with sharp fangs and hands stained with fresh blood. It was a scene scary enough for the people to feel their scalps going numb. The 2 magicians quickly fled inside the cage and sealed the door with chains. The zombies were extremely quick. As they rammed into the cage, it began to buzz slightly. Some even jumped onto the cage and extended their arms into it, trying to grab the people inside. The cage was now fully surrounded by zombies, biting and waving their arms trying to get at the people inside and eat them alive. This is the end. There are so many of them. Zhao Kunsen fell to the ground in despair. The cage can still last for a while, said Wang Sanpeng. It's only a matter of time before we're eaten. The young man in the rider jacket wet his pants. The undead were the most relentless creatures. Even though the cage was made of special materials, it still could not stand being pounded by the zombies continuously. The bars began to show signs of cracking. One of the zombies even threaded half of its body through the gap. Lightning strike. As the trapped people were overwhelmed with despair, an imperious voice sounded from outside the building. A great swath of lightning serpents wriggled toward the cage and spread through the zombies. The cage was conductive, so the lightning arcs were transmitted back and forth between the zombies and the cage. Those that were grabbing onto the cage were twitching intensely from the lightning shock. The lightning strike was rather extraordinary, leaving the zombies fully paralyzed on the ground. Their eyes were still staring at the cage in greed, yet they could no longer move their bodies. The people inside the cage were unharmed, just terrified at seeing the lightning flickering close to them. When the zombies fell to the ground, the people saw Mo Fan in a black long-sleeve shirt walking into the broken doorway. His hands still had lightning arcs circling them. He was the person who had instantly suppressed the zombies. Mo Fan, Zhao Kunsen and Wang Sanpeng almost dropped to their knees to express their gratitude to the heavens. The rescue had come at such a perfect time. Meanwhile, the teenage girl and the young man who wet his pants stared at Mo Fan in disbelief. They never thought a single spell would be able to immobilize so many zombies. Finish them, or else they will rise again very soon. Mo Fan's arms still had lightning on them. The lightning arcs continued to paralyze the zombies. After all, the fourth-tier lightning strike, which was capable of producing a paralyzing electric field, was the most suitable to handle these zombies with their stiff joints. Zhou Ming did not show any mercy. She cast a fire burst, burning bones on each of the zombies on the ground, burning them into ashes while they were still immobilized. Just these few? Mu Bai walked into the room and frowned when he discovered that there were only 7 people in the cage, including Zhao Kunsen and Wang Sanpeng. The others are scattered across the place. We'll take as many as we can. It's impossible to try to search for everyone. Let's go, said Shorty. We can't take the path ahead. Wang Sanpeng, who was relatively collected, told everyone the situation. Mo Fan felt his head aching when he heard Wang Sanpeng's words. It was obvious that there was a flesh-mound corpse official right on the main street ahead, with over 1,000 undead in the area. It was impossible to proceed forward without going a long way around it. Let's take a look first. It should be fine as long as we don't fight the corpse official. If we try to go around it, the army of undead behind might catch up to us, said Mo Fan. Chapter 614 The Dead Street. It was a fairly spacious street, with shops, shopping malls, office buildings, and structures along the way. However, there were not many alleyways on the sides, while the main path toward the Yuan Gate was occupied by the undead. It went without saying that the street would have the highest number of civilians, thus the majority of the undead headed straight for it. As a result, the whole street was basically filled with undead. On top of that, a flesh-mound corpse official the size of a building was sitting right in the middle of the street, like a mountain of flesh. Even magicians would have a hard time trying to pass it. Mo Fan and his crew were not afraid of facing a crowd of zombies. They could easily handle warrior-level undead too, but in the case of the flesh-mound corpse official, they would still die even if they were given 10,000 lives. They carefully approached the street and discovered that the whole place was indeed crawling with all kinds of skeletons, zombies, and phantoms. Most terrifyingly, there were quite a few corpse generals and skeleton generals among them. The street was stained with blood, with dead bodies spread across the place. It was simply a scene of the apocalypse. This is nothing but a dead street, said Shorty, up on the balcony of a building, with a trembling voice. Glancing down from above, they could see people who were totally unaware of the situation making their way toward the street. Even magicians would not be able to survive after running into the undead, let alone civilians. There are too many of them. It will be hard for us to make our way through with just the few of us, Bai pointed out. It's possible that there are other magicians nearby. We can find them and team up. Otherwise, we're all going to die here, said Shorty. Mo Fan nodded. The undead on the street were too dense. It would be a tough fight trying to make their way through. Their biggest problem was the flesh-mound corpse official. Once they caught its attention, they would all die here. I'll go and look for people. Shorty was decisive in situations like this. He quickly vanished from the group. I'll take a look at the situation ahead. Bai, Zhou Ming, you two stay here to protect them, said Mo Fan, who did not want to wait there and do nothing. There were civilians in their group. It was not reasonable to simply barge their way through. They would have to clear a path so the people of Bo City Street could make it to the other end safely. All right, be careful, said Zhou Ming. Mo Fan was already gone when his words were still echoing through the building they were hiding in. It was extremely easy for Mo Fan to move around in an area with many buildings like this. He could move freely as long as there were shadows. The overlapping shadows of the buildings and the blind corners served as stepping stones for Mo Fan, allowing him to move forward freely. Mo Fan jumped down from a balcony, holding onto the iron bars of a window, before propelling himself to another balcony on a shorter building. The balcony was in the dark as the tall office building beside it had blocked off the sunlight. Mo Fan's figure sank into the shadows like falling into water as he arrived on the balcony. He went missing for a few seconds. Not long after, Mo Fan appeared from the other side of the balcony. His eyes were observing the Death Street only a building away. Mo Fan lowered his eyes and glanced at the alleyway drenched in rain. He fell freely from the balcony and landed on the umbrella outside of a coffee shop. Mo Fan utilized the bounce of the umbrella to land safely on the ground. To his surprise, he saw a phantom under the umbrella when he turned around. The phantom had horns on its head, with a pointy, long jaw. Fangs poked out from its mouth like a boar, and its face was entirely red. It was roaming aimlessly in the area when a human fell from the sky after the umbrella shuddered for a moment. The phantom stared right into Mo Fan's eyes, with a blossoming lust rising in it. Lightning strike! The phantom uttered a weird cry and lunged at Mo Fan. Mo Fan nimbly hopped aside, dodging the pounce, and fired lightning from his palm. The lightning arcs cracked loudly as they crawled over the phantom. The shock from the lightning arcs scorched the skin of the phantom and left it twitching on the ground, as if it were performing a fascinating dance of electricity. Mo Fan's lightning strike was quite powerful. Meanwhile, the phantom turned out to be fairly weak. The lightning arcs took its life as soon as they penetrated the creature's body. A small soul remnant floated into the little loach pendant. It's dead already? Mo Fan was quite surprised, but he did not overthink it. The building ahead was the only thing between him and the dead street. There was a coffee shop right behind the building. Mo Fan simply hid inside the coffee shop and slowly made his way forward to check out the situation on the dead street. After passing the coffee shop, Mo Fan arrived in a huge hall. There were a few skeletons roaming aimlessly inside the hall. Mo Fan did not engage, turning into a shadow sweeping across the ceiling to pass them by. Further ahead was the dead street. The windows of the shop facing the street were smashed, leaving glass scattered across the floor. Inside the shop was the corpse of a man whose face was bitten beyond recognition. Judging from his clothes, he was most likely the worker in the shop. A few mannequins were knocked down in the display corner. Mo Fan hid behind the mannequins. The fleeing shadow allowed him to merge with the dim background and conceal his presence. The low-ranked undead would not be able to discover his presence for a while. Outside the window was the dead street. The place was slightly wider than Mo Fan first observed from the balcony. He could not cross the street with fleeing shadow even if he wanted to. At a rough glance, there were more than 200 zombies, skeletons, and phantoms, with 3 to 4 warrior-level undead nearby. Even a group of elite intermediate magicians would have a hard time clearing a path. There was nothing he could do. The place where the flesh-mound corpse official landed would be crawling with undead. Mo Fan could only hope that Shorty managed to find some reliable magicians. They would only have a chance of crossing the street by working together. Mo Fan checked his surroundings and discovered a cross-section with less undead. It turned out to be a zebra crossing. After the zebra crossing was a narrow pedestrian walk. If the group could somehow make it to the pedestrian walk, the undead chasing them from behind would be restricted by the buildings on both sides, helping the group escape. A magician that can fly? Mo Fan was about to leave when he saw a magician in a purple outfit standing on the restaurant opposite the shop he was in. Wind wings were rotating behind the man's back. Even though the wings were not beating, the air surrounding the man was spinning rapidly. The man in the purple outfit seemed to have come here to observe the situation too. His gaze crossed the street and locked onto Mo Fan, who was disguising himself as a mannequin. "How many people do you have, Shadow Magician?" The man's voice suddenly came from across the street. It was so clear to Mo Fan that it felt like the man was talking right beside him. Mo Fan was startled, before recalling that Xinxia had used the same method to talk to him before. Chapter 615 White Ants Fighting to Stay Alive. The guy could transmit his voice, but how was Mo Fan going to respond back? Would they have to take out their phones, open up WeChat, and shake at the same time to add each other as friends? Perhaps the advanced wind magician in the purple outfit could tell Mo Fan his phone number. The truth was, either way was terrible. The demon creatures were extremely sensitive toward any form of signal. Even sending someone an emoji would simply give the demon creatures nearby a GPS coordinate, urging them to rush toward the signal. We have 4 intermediate magicians, 2 basic magicians, and 5 civilians, but one of us is trying to gather the people nearby. Mo Fan had no clue how to respond. He simply mumbled to himself, not sure if the advanced magician could hear him. Mo Fan had guessed right. The magician soon responded, "Try and gather as many people as you can. My other 2 comrades and I will handle the Fleshmount Corpse official, so you can take hold of the opportunity to cross the street together with the others. Make sure you have enough intermediate magicians, as we'll have to focus on dealing with the Fleshmount Corpse official. You will have to deal with the servant class and warrior level undead on your own," said the magician in the purple robe. "Not a problem. I'll immediately bring the message back, and gather the people here to cross the street," replied Mo Fan. "Thanks. If someone is hesitating, tell them that we are the Imperial Magicians. My name is Zuo Feng. I hope they won't miss this chance to escape," said the magician. Imperial Magicians, oh, okay. Mo Fan immediately returned to the place everyone was hiding at. To Mo Fan's astonishment, there were less than 10 people when he left, but the room was now filled with people. There were 40 to 50 more people. Mo Fan had to admit that he was impressed by Shorty's ability to gather people. He had managed to convince 4 or 5 groups of people to join them. On top of that, most of the people were magicians, only 20 of them were civilians. Obviously, Shorty had purposely recruited groups with more magicians. Based on Mo Fan's understanding, Shorty was not the kind of person that would do a good deed. The civilians would easily become a burden if there were too many of them. Indeed, Shorty never assumed himself to be a righteous magician with the obligation to save everyone's life. Someone who referred to himself as an Imperial Magician is on the other side of the street. He is asking us to gather as many people as we can and make our way across the street while they are dealing with the Fleshmount Corpse official, Mo Fan informed the crowd inside the room. "Imperial Magicians, they are here. We're saved," yelled a middle-aged magician with a beanie in relief. "Awesome, it seems like the Imperial Magicians are finally making their moves." "I told you not to give up," said a battle maga with thick makeup. "With the Imperial Magicians clearing a path for us, we should be able to make it safely." No, listen to me. The Imperial Magicians will handle the corpse official, but they have no time to handle the undead on the street. We'll have to face them on our own," repeated Mo Fan grimly. "No way. Aren't they here to save us?" One of the teenage girls started sobbing. Don't panic. We have many magicians here too, so as long as we stay in order and wait for the perfect chance to cross, we still have a hope of surviving. I'm an intermediate plant magician. Just trust us," said the battle maga with thick makeup. "Yeah, Don't underestimate us. Didn't that shorty over there say that too? They have 4 intermediate magicians from their group, and each one is an expert too. Even though I'm only at the basic level, my element is fire. If those undead dare to come, I'll let them have a piece of my fire burst, rupture. The group was quite good overall, and everyone was aware that they had to work together in order to cross the street safely, so they were willing to comply with the arrangement. Shorty, Zhou Ming, Mo Fan, and Mu Bai's group were all intermediate magicians. They were the strongest among them. Therefore, the other groups were willing to follow their orders. Mu Bai, what do you think? Asked Mo Fan. I think we need more people, said Mu Bai frankly. Yeah, strength in numbers, Zhou Ming nodded. No, that doesn't work in this situation. But everyone here should know about termite survival theory? Mu Bai immediately displayed his wisdom as a top student. Termite survival theory? I didn't really study a lot. I have no idea what that means, said the middle-aged man in the beanie. A group of termites is moving their habitat, but the path ahead is suddenly set aflame. If they simply try to cross the fire on their own, they will be burned to death. Therefore, the termites hugged together into a huge ball of termites and rolled toward the flames. Soon, the termites on the outer layer died, followed by the next few layers, but the majority of them managed to cross the wall of fire, explained Mu Bai to the crowd calmly. The room fell silent instantly. Everyone's face turned grim. He's right, it's impossible for everyone to cross the street safely. We have to accept the reality. There are just too few of us, so we can't form a thick ball still like the termites. We're all going to die if we try to cross the street, but if we have enough people, some might die, but the rest would still reach the other end safely, said a man with a mustache. The man was wearing a formal suit. He was most likely the CEO of some company based in one of the office buildings nearby. He was a civilian, yet his awareness was a lot better than the others who were extremely worried. Apart from luck, civilians involved in a disaster like this had to have good awareness. If they did not make use of the chances given to them to escape and retreat, they would most likely end up dead. I guess that's the only way. I know a group of people hiding on the roof of an apartment. I'll call them over. There should be another group in the basement of the parking lot, but they don't have any magicians. Should I call them along too? The handsome guy was very clear. There would be sacrifices, but the key is to have as many people as we can. The more people we have, the lower the chance of us dying. It doesn't matter if they aren't magicians, we just need living humans. Call them along, exclaimed a woman in leather pants who looked like a model. Just tell them to join us if they want to escape this place. This is the last train, but safety isn't guaranteed. Those who think otherwise should just wait here, Shorty told the people who went to recruit more people. The crowd proceeded to search for more people. In order to increase the chance of them surviving, they tried their very best to gather the people nearby. It would be better if there were more magicians, since they could hold off the undead for a little longer, but it was fine if there were not, since they would simply be a flock of sheep crossing the river, with some among them getting eaten by the crocodiles. Chapter 616 700 People Crossing the Dead Street. Mo Fan stood on a tall balcony and glanced down. He saw that the crowd was already squeezing their way out of the building. Their tiny heads were swarming forward with a loud noise, as if a huge protest was going on with boards and banners waving, "Say number to the undead." He roughly estimated the crowd numbered at least 700 people. There were not many magicians in the crowd. Previously, there were only 30 magicians in the building, but after recruiting 600 more people, there were 90 magicians in total, less than 100. On top of that, most of them were only basic magicians. There were only 17 intermediate magicians, including himself, Shorty, Zhou Ming, and Mu Bai. As for the other 13 magicians, only 2 of them had soul seeds. Therefore, it was extremely impractical for them to try clearing a path through over 1,000 undead. The world had always been cruel. Mo Fan felt like he had done everything he could. He could only pray that fewer people would die when they were trying to cross to the other side of the street on the zebra crossing. The 1,000 undead were scattered along the dead street, therefore not everyone would be immediately targeted by an undead. Mo Fan speculated that around 100 people would be dragged into the water by the crocodiles. A 1/7 chance of dying. Apart from those whose brains had already gone blank because of overwhelming fear, most people would rather bet their lives on it instead. When Mo Fan was thinking about how petty the human race was, a quarrel broke out on the surface. "Don't let me repeat it again. Let people with infants stay in the middle," said Shorty coldly as he grabbed a man in a leather jacket. "What right does he have? He's an adult too. Is it just because he's carrying a baby? I would have picked up an infant along the way too. I've seen many kids who no one even cares about," challenged the man in the leather jacket. "Are you daring me to throw you onto the street now?" Shorty did not waste any time with the man. He simply dragged him out from the crowd. All right, I'll listen to you, I'll let him go inside." The man in the leather jacket was no match for Shorty. He had never seen such an immoral magician. "Damn it, you just have to force me to be rough with you. Everyone, listen up. Kids who are shorter than 120 centimeters will stay in the middle. Those who are on the outside, shut the fuck up, since us magicians who are risking our lives for you without getting paid will be on the outermost layer," yelled Shorty furiously. "But people who are carrying kids when they are adults themselves," someone blurted out among the crowd. It was difficult to control the situation involving so many people. Everyone was seeing their own life as precious. No one would want to be on the outer layers, since they were the easiest targets. "I'll leave this little guy to you." To stop the crowd from rioting, the man carrying the little boy expressionlessly handed the kid to one of the elderly women. The woman was wearing dancing shoes. She had most likely woken up early in the morning to attend a dance in the public square. The woman received the crying kid and said, "I still haven't heard from my poor grandchild." "Don't worry. I'll look after your son." The man with gray hair nodded. He proceeded to the outermost layer without commenting further. "Humph. Are you satisfied now? If so, then shut the fuck up. Us wind magicians worked hard to keep the undead away just so everyone can group up here. I don't want you attracting their attention again," Shorty snarled unpleasantly. After venting his grudge, Shorty raised his head and gave Mo Fan a signal, telling him that the crowd was about to cross the street. A crowd of 700 people. The truth was, it did not really matter who was on the inner or outer layers. The people would surely panic while crossing the street. The situation was going to be messy. It was purely a matter of luck when it came down to who would survive in the end. "Mo Fan, I'll leave the high ground to you." Mu Bai, who had somehow become the leader of the group without him noticing, said to Mo Fan up on the balcony. Mo Fan nodded. The truth was, Mo Fan was not a natural leader. He was able to make quick decisions in his own view, thus he had no problem leading a small group of magicians. However, he was not very capable of leading a large group like this. For those who kept complaining, if Mo Fan felt annoyed, he would simply end those idiots' lives before the undead were involved. By the way, shouldn't I be covering the high ground? My primary element is wind, and my secondary element is water. Either the wind disk or the rolling wave has a huge coverage area to sweep the undead away. I'm more suitable for the job, said an ordinary-looking magician, who obviously came from a renowned family. Dulakong, stop trying to make decisions on your own. Let's focus on crossing the street, said the girl with him. I'm just worried. He looks like he's only in his 20s. How strong could he be? At least I'm, said Dulakong. Enough with your crap, the people are moving, we magicians should focus on protecting them. Dulakong glanced up at Mo Fan on the higher ground. He was not too convinced about leaving such an important role to Mo Fan. Mo Fan was not too bothered. He was responsible for eliminating huge groups of undead and communicating with the Imperial magician Zuo Feng from before. With such a large crowd, it was impossible to hide their presence for long. They would soon attract the attention of the flesh-mound corpse official in the middle of the street. Once the corpse official started making its way toward them, there would not be 100 to 200 casualties. It was possible that the whole group would be wiped out. Therefore, they had to wait until the Imperial magicians engaged the corpse general and lured it and some other warrior-level undead far away from the crowd. Otherwise, they would have trouble crossing the street safely. Shadow Magician, we're about to engage. Ask your people to prepare themselves. Remember, you have to be quick. We can't guarantee that the corpse official won't turn around and focus on the crowd instead. Zuo Feng's voice came. His voice was still echoing in Mo Fan's ears when a sudden gust swept across the street, breaking the glasses on the nearby buildings. Mo Fan glanced ahead and immediately saw the imperial magician named Zuo Feng. The wind wings on his back were extraordinarily glamorous, almost 4 meters long when fully extended. A gust in the shape of a spiral followed behind his figure. As Zuo Feng beat his wings, he glided rapidly across the buildings utilizing the wind track the wings had produced. Even the puddles on the ground could only reflect a blurry figure. The undead on the ground felt something sweeping past above them. As they slowly turned their heads around, the imperial magician had already flown 100 meters past them. The group of idiotic creatures finally chased after him. This Zuo Feng purposely lured a group of undead away just so it's safer for the people to cross the street. He's a nice guy, exclaimed Mo Fan. A moment later, while the undead was less dense, Mo Fan gave Mu Bai the signal. Mu Bai finally blew the horn to signal the people to advance forward. The people in front did not want to move at the start, but when the people behind shoved them forward, they were forced to move, as they would be trampled to death if they remained still. As such, the crowd began to move forward. 700 people had suddenly turned into a suicide squad as they rushed out from the building, straight toward the street that was crawling with undead.